The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
All right, let's answer your question and give you some good news.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to say that.
I'm on her side, and I don't know exactly what her side is.
I think you're totally spot on with that.
I sound inept just to help you out.
It's been a rough week, thanks to your advice.
Are you a regular listener to this program?
As much as I can be.
There's your problem.
I would not ever disagree with you because you're so smart. You have a lot of answers to a lot of things.
You don't want to listen to me on the radio.
So what do I do?
I can't give you any direction.
Thank you for empowering me. I needed that.
I'm losing you, buddy. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Well, do you know somebody who does?
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
This is remind you of something from the 20s, that flapper years. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. This is E-Person Monday. I can never get my talk-to-text to get that right. Usually if I deal with an E-person, I send somebody an email that says, I addressed your question, and I say on an E-Person Monday, but it says each person. It never, ever says E-Person, no matter how much, according to the suggestion of my call screamer Eric Dumont, that I hesitate. I addressed your question on an E-Person Monday, no matter how much I do that, talk to text. Now, it may be because I have an iPhone 3. That could be part of it. I would imagine talk to text got greater. Anyway, we'll get to those shortly. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. A lady come into my office. She was 36 years old, very frustrated with her 12-year-old son. We talked for a while and tried to narrow down the reasons for her frustration, and she targeted 3 things. She said he really doesn't keep up with his responsibilities around the house. She said he's lazy. That's what she used. She used a generic trait term. He's lazy. Now, I'm sure he wasn't lazy in playing video games. I'm sure he wasn't lazy if he went out for football, but maybe he was. But what she meant was he was lazy in his responsibilities. She says he eats poorly, and as a result, he's gaining weight. And he's only 12, and already he's overweight, which this was a while back. This was probably 20-some years ago, when the percentage of overweight children in our country was smaller. Now it's pretty significant. It's at least a third, at least. All right. And then she said, he really watches too much television. Now again, this is before the onslaught of social media, before the onslaught of heavy video games, before the onslaught of smartphones. We talked, she and I talked, about what it was that was holding her back from doing something about all this. In summary, it was, I, as his mother, don't keep up with my household chores. I, as his mother, watch too much TV. And I, as his mother, eat poorly and am overweight. She believed that she did not have the right or the authority to intervene, to do something about this young man's bad habits that were hurting him. Because until she got her house in order, so to speak, she didn't have the authority to do that. She'd be a hypocrite. And furthermore, he'd throw it back at her. Well, you don't do those things either. I asked her an introductory question, because we were going to unpack this in more detail. I said, do you want your son to develop the habits that you don't like in you? No, not at all. I wish you wouldn't. Do you think you have the right to raise him well as his mother, even though you don't believe you have the self-discipline to model those behaviors? Well, yeah, I'm his mother. I should be able to raise him in a good way. Are you willing to do this, even though you yourself at age 36 have not at least somewhat conquered these bad habits? She said, well, wouldn't he just view me as a hypocrite? Wouldn't he just view me as not following my own rules? I go, yeah, he probably could. Is that enough to allow him to continue on these paths? Do you want your son to be like you in those respects? No, I don't. Well, then you're going to have to do something about it, even though you yourself have not done something about it for your own existence. That idea was foreign to her. She thought that unless she perfectly modeled and walked in the paths that she was trying to teach her son, although she wasn't trying to teach her son, but she would be trying to teach her son if she took charge, that it would be useless, because he would see right through it. He would say, yeah, well, Mom, you watch too much TV. Mom, you don't do your chores either. Mom, look how you eat, Mom. And I don't have any doubt he would. He would do that. Kids are very good at doing that. They're going to home in very quickly on where our words don't match our talk. Of course. Why wouldn't they? If they want to invalidate what you're trying to get them to do for their own good, by the way, of course. I drew an example. I said, if you smoked as an adolescent, or you snuck away when you were 15, 16, and you developed a habit of smoking, would that mean that your 16-year-old would be permitted to smoke? You did. Does that give them license? If you have a temper, and you say things you shouldn't say when you're mad, does that mean it is permissible for that child to act similarly? That when they get mad, you can say all kinds of nasty things. Is that what that means? The reality is, we have the responsibility to teach our children, even if we can't completely or perfectly or even well live up to the standards we're trying to teach them. No doubt in my mind, there's a lot of parents who talk to their children in snotty ways. No doubt. Now, the parents don't want the kids to talk to them in snotty ways. And that's understandable. We have a commandment. You got to honor your father and mother, okay? I got that. But nevertheless, we teach that you can't talk that way even though we talk that way. I want my children to be more virtuous than I am, more mature in their conduct as they get older. I want them to reach higher than me. Now, you can say than me. It used to be higher than I, but now you're allowed to say higher than me because the grammatical rules are shifting. I want that. I don't want the artificial limit on my authority as a parent to be my own conduct. Now, all that said, is teaching better and easier and more likely to be absorbed if you live what you're trying to teach? Of course. Absolutely. No argument there. But if you put a ceiling on what you're allowed to teach because of your own conduct, that all of your frailties, all of your sinfulness, all of your deficiencies are going to keep you from teaching your children the virtues that you haven't yet really mastered or even absorbed consistently. We tried to get that mom past her own resistance. She didn't come too many more times for whatever the reasons. I forget, it was long ago. But tried to get her past where we could to say you owe it to your son to put the conditions upon his behavior, where he does have to help out, where you do monitor his food intake, and you do put limits on his television for his own good. Even though it's not for your good, because you haven't yet done that. You want him to not grow up having the bad habits that you don't like in yourself. Your authority is not dependent upon your own virtue. Your virtue certainly helps your authority. There's no question about that one. But at the same time, if you limit what you're allowed to teach your children because you yourself fall short in those areas, you're shortchanging your kids. This is Dr. Ray.
Looking for a trusted contractor for your exterior home improvements? Call locally owned Mighty Dog Roofing today for a quote on roofing, gutters, siding, or windows. Mighty Dog Roofing uses premium products including Owens Corning shingles and James Hardy fiber cement siding, and they offer one of the best warranties in the industry through their OC Platinum Preferred status. Visit MightyDogRoofing.com today or call 833-MIGHTY-4. That's 833-MIGHTY-4.
Underwritten in part by this not-for-profit.
Hi, this is Mike Ditkin.
Hey, this is Brian May.
Hi, I'm Chris Farley. You're listening to the Kevin Matthews Show.
I thought he was insane. A lot of people thought he was insane.
Nobody could touch us. We had 10 million people listening to us a week. But that was my past. If you would have told me I'd be carrying around a broken statue of the Virgin Mary, talking about God, I'd say, are you high?
Broken Mary, the Kevin Matthews Story. In theaters one day only on Tuesday, October 7th. Tickets at brokenmaryfilm.com.
This week on Christ is the Answer, we continue Father John's RCIA for Catholic series. Over the years of pastoring a church, Father John noticed that converts to Catholicism almost always seem to know their newly found faith much better than their cradle Catholic brothers and sisters. So, he made an RCIA program for lifelong Catholics. Join us this week as Father John expounds on the Holy Spirit and our inviolable dignity. Tune in for Christ is the Answer, Monday through Fridays at 11 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
Catholic Radio's Renaissance Man. Somebody corrected me in an email once. They said, it's Renaissance. And I said, yeah, but I've won it so many times. They're thinking of changing the name, kind of like Gulf of America. Renaissance. This is E-Person Monday. Got this call. Well, actually, a missive. Good evening, Dr. Ray. All right. A little more formal intro here. I have 4 children, ages 5, 3, and 1. Another one on the way. Wow, that's a nice, packed, tight family. My 5-year-old is extremely shy. When we go to play dates or events, he's always trying to hide behind me. Okay. I tell him to play, but he doesn't want to. My 3-year-old is not like this. But, here's the big but, from time to time he has the same behavior when he sees his 5-year-old brother doing this. Okay. Let me jump in. Shyness is a temperamental quality, and I forget the statistics. I remember once reading that about 50% of kids develop out of shyness. what they had as that inclination when they were little, disappeared with life, with development, with socialization, all kinds of factors. So, shyness it can be a predisposition. And it's not unusual that I will talk to parents who say, I have a child who's shy, and yeah, I'm kind of shy myself. So, all right. Is it anything that is necessarily psychologically aberrant? Of course not. Of course not. Now, can it reduce a kid's experiences, fun, enjoying experiences? Yeah, it can, sure. Sure, because indeed they avoid things that would otherwise give them pleasure. And I haven't looked this up. I think it's something I need to do. For social anxieties, people who have social anxieties, who are uncomfortable in a range of social situations, were they no, I shouldn't say pathologically shy. Don't, Ray. Extremely shy when they were kids. And I would bet that there would be a certain percentage where they would have that inclination. All right, all that said. He hides behind mom or his parent. I'm looking at the name here, and I think, I'm not sure exactly if this is a male or female. It is from an ethnic source. Hides behind his parent, and he won't budge. Now, there's a couple things a parent could do about this. A parent could say, well, okay, you don't want to play, don't play. All right. Or the parent could say, you can't do this, and if you don't want to go play, you're going to sit over here, and you're going to watch the kids play. Yeah, what you're going to do is you're going to remove yourself from the protector role. I used to work for a lot of Head Start programs. I evaluated the kids. Every so often, we would have a kid who did not want to partake in the class activities. Or we would have a kid who simply would not speak. And even when I talked to the parent said, oh yeah, she's a jabbermouth at home, she does nothing but. But she would come into Head Start and just retreat. She wouldn't say a word to anybody. And the kids quickly picked up on that. Oh yeah, that's Angela. She doesn't talk. All right, so Angela drifted into the role. One of the suggestions I made to the teacher was, all right, well, let's make sure that we put Angela near a couple of kids that are having a great time, clearly enjoying themselves in whatever activity they're in. Sit her next to someone who's more outgoing, who could invite her into the activity. That's what I would suggest here. If the parent is not hiding the child, if the child is not retreating behind the parent's backside, move away from that. Say, no, you can't do that. Now, you're not necessarily going to force him into partaking, but you're going to make it easier or less threatening to partake. Let him see that the kids are having a pretty good time. I wouldn't try to convince him, to keep pushing on him and convincing him and reasoning with him. I wouldn't, because I think it's natural to resist that. You're not going to reason him into doing something that he's, at least for the moment, uncomfortable doing. He's 5. All he knows is that he feels ill at ease about this, and I just don't want to do it. All right. You could have other kids that you know in these play dates. Talk to the parents and say, would he come over and invite him to play? Throw a ball to him. Do something to engage him. Now, typically what happens is that inch by inch, a shy child will start to partake a little bit, inch by inch. He may not be outgoing, jumping in there, being the leader of the pack. He might not do that. It's not who he is. Okay, That's fine. But we also can't assume this is the way he's always going to be. We don't know that. It's the way he is right now at age 5. And she goes on, or he goes on. I'm not originally from this country. Oh, okay, it is, Mom. But my husband is American, and it's been very difficult for me to adapt to the culture and to try to make friends who speak English since I have a very thick accent. We're in a homeschooling group, and the people we hang with are usually from that group, so he already knows them, but he is still extremely shy. Well, that's good. That's to your advantage, because if he already knows them, you can incorporate them to help you out. You can get some of the kids to go take him by the hand. Now, if he's really shy, he'll resist. But again, I would say that you, as his mother, would not allow him to hide behind you. I also would say, when it's snack time and goodie time and all the stuff he really enjoys, I might say something like, well, you're not going to get a snack today because that young man asked you to play with him, and you didn't. That wasn't very nice. Just kind of like that. I would do something like that, make it worth his while. She says, I don't want him to be like this. I want him to have his friends and have fun. I can understand that, Mom. I can understand you wouldn't want him to be like that. He's missing out. But 1, I wouldn't panic. That's my first message. Don't panic. 2, extricate yourself. You're not his protector in that sense, because there's nothing to protect him from. He thinks it's threatening if he would interact with these kids, but there is no threat there, and he needs to see there's no threat. That is the source of anxiety so often. I don't want to do that. Why? Because it's threatening. Well, how's it threatening? Well, I don't know. It just makes me feel a certain way. Well, yeah, making you feel a certain way is not threatening. There's no threat there. There's no danger there. But your body is reacting as though there is danger, and his body's reacting rather uncomfortably, so he avoids it. As long as I stay away, I'm comfortable. It's kind of the source of a lot of people's anxiety, whether you're 5 or whether you're 55. He needs to see. He needs to be exposed gradually to these situations, and he will see that not only are they not threatening, but he'll see they can be enjoyable. Now, when you walk in the door to one of these events, he's not likely to take off, find the biggest bunch of kids bubbling around, and jump in the middle of them. Not who he is. Not who he is. And you may have to do this kind of inch-by-inch shaping, if you will. The fancy term for it, in some respects, is called successive approximation. That's how they train Shamu to do all the things Shamu does. Inch by inch, they reward him for doing these little behaviors that add up into pretty complex stuff. And that's really what you're kind of doing with your son. You're successfully, inch by inch, shaping him to partake with these other kids so that at some point, and it may take a month or 2, at some point he is not as ill at ease and he's not as quick to run behind you, and you're sitting down so he can't hide behind you. Put your chair against the wall so he can't hide behind you. There you go, Mom. All right. Oh, shyness. I had a lady once who was very, very anxiety prone. And she told me that when she was in the first grade, she remembered back when she was in the first grade, how she resisted going to school. There's something about school that made her anxious. And it was her temperament. But temperament is not destiny. Temperament is an inclination. We can learn to act against our temperament. Very much appreciate you being with me. It's Dr. Ray Guarendi. The program, The Doctor is In, co-production of Ave Maria Radio Communications and EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, some 400 to 500 stations worldwide, as well as Sirius Satellite Channel 130 and all the apps that our many affiliates and networks have. It's delightful to be a part of all this. Never would have dreamed it. Never would have dreamed it in a million years. Had I not flunked that Physics 2 midterm exam and had to drop physics and ultimately dropped engineering, never would have gone into psychology. And was preparing for a law career. Never would have gone into psychology after that, except I got into a special program where you could get your master's in your senior year of college. I thought, this psychology stuff, this is kind of, I might kind of like this. And then one thing led to another, and I got a chance to be here with you. All right, this E-Person Monday, little social revelation there. 3 months ago, I was humiliated at work. Well, okay, let me interrupt. Maybe a more accurate thing to say was that somebody tried to humiliate you at work. Remember, if you're going to be humiliated, you have to absorb it. You have to say that whatever they did somehow, some way made me emotionally hurting. Now, Dr. A, you're playing with words. No, not really. Not really. Remember, if somebody's going to humiliate you, you also have to cooperate. I know that sounds funny, but it is. Somebody could be as goofy and nasty and awful towards you, but how much it affects you is still on you. Okay, that's it. Here's the source of the humiliation. My coworker verbally attacked me and screamed expletives at me in front of my manager and supervisor. Now, obviously I have no idea what the context was. Although one could say, sounded like she was pretty inappropriate. And there's an inverse relation here. The more inappropriate, out of line somebody is, the more likely the problem is theirs, not yours. Now, she tried to make you look bad and was screaming at you for whatever the reason. My guess would be part of the reason for her overreaction, what it sounds like, is that somehow, some way, she thought this was a threat to her image as a person or as a worker or as competent. I would bet that for somebody to unload on you like that in a situation where if you did something wrong, it wasn't so wrong that you should be verbally blistered in front of other people. So the first thing you got to do is you got to interpret this as, what was her problem? Now, my guess would be, after doing all these years of therapy, is that if you and I explored this, we would see that her problem was perhaps she's insecure, perhaps there's a competition there, perhaps she is very sensitive to looking inept at work, whatever it might be, something set her off. And if you say, yeah, well, I didn't do what I should have done, and it kind of redounded upon her, okay, I got that. But to unload like that? No, you got to start asking some questions about that. All right. Fast forward. I have been working on forgiving her, but I feel as if I have been given the blueprint, but don't have the materials. Now, what I hear you saying, to use psychobabble, is that I know I should forgive her. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to let it go. But I'm not doing it very well. In other words, how do I do this? Do you have any practical applications for working through forgiveness and also coping with the betrayal? Yeah, I do. To the degree you can kind of understand why she did that, you'll probably soften toward her, because I got a feeling that to act that inappropriately as you describe it says something about her. It truly does. And you said a sense of betrayal. Maybe this betrayal was you thought she was your friend, or you thought she was a pleasant coworker, and you found out that if you crossed her in some way, or if you did something she didn't approve of in some way, she could turn on you. And so what it does is that changes the nature of the relationship. It's not so much a betrayal. It's a revelation of the relationship. It was an okay one, as long as you didn't step over some line that she had set up. And to cuss you out using expletives is totally inappropriate. So one should ask, that one meaning you, should ask, what is her problem? What was that? Okay. Now here is such a key line. She was my dear friend before. Forgive me, please, but I don't think she was such a dear friend. A dear friend is not going to turn on you like that. My guess would be that she had certain conditions to your friendship, and you broke one of the conditions. In her mind. Somehow you made her look bad. Or somehow you did something that was inappropriate as she defined it. Something. But a dear friend? Well, maybe things were pretty smooth. And in fact, maybe it was a warm friendship, but what happened was she was in a position that threatened her sense of self. I know I'm starting to sound psychological, but something had to set her off. A dear friend doesn't turn on you like that, and furthermore, you make no mention that she apologized. You make no mention that she said, I am so sorry, I was so out of line, please forgive me. No, it apparently sounds like it's all upon you to kind of let this pass, because she is, in essence, not saying a word about it. So, being a dear friend and doing this to you without apologizing, the two don't go together. Something is incongruous here. I was the one who recommended her for this position. I no longer trust her. Well, depending upon the unload, I can understand that. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with forgiveness. You could not want to put yourself in that same position and still forgive her. And we'll get to that. There's more to talk about on the other side of this break. I'm Dr. Ray. Brushes are cool. Doing my own stunt voices. My own discipline. No body doubles here, and I pronounce all difficult words myself. Psychopharmacological. Aluminum, Massachusetts, and Ashtabula. Those three words. As well as Worcestershire sauce. Those words make people stumble. Okay, I was reading an e-person from a woman, and I'll give a quick summary. 3 months back, a coworker unloaded on her, screamed, cussed her out in front of the manager and supervisor. She said, I was humiliated. I made the observation that, the degree of humiliation is still in part left up to us. You can scream at me, you can yell at me, you can call me names, but the degree to which I allow myself to be humiliated by that is still in my power. It isn't automatic. It's not a reflex. You act bad, therefore I have to feel bad. No. So, that said, she goes on, she said, I've been working on forgiving her. She was my dear friend before. I made the observation that something is missing. Dear friend, before. Well, first of all, how long? Dear friend for a year? 6 months? The shorter that dear friendship, the more likely that it was... Okay, I'm going to say superficially dear. In that, you shared a lot of commonalities. You enjoyed each other's company. You seemed to have the same ideas about things. And as long as something didn't happen to challenge that dear friendship, it was okay. It looked good. Felt good. Seemed warm. But apparently, you did something that she decided was unconscionable. Or this, the friendship was reasonably solid. However, when she was in that work position, it challenged her sense of self, her self-image, her sense of competency. And if she interpreted something you did that made her look bad, well, you stepped over the line. All right. I always say there's sometimes, sadly, a relationship-breaking event. Something that you didn't see coming. And you thought that the relationship could weather it. And you underestimated it. All right, now, I was the one who recommended her for this position. Okay, now your sense of betrayal, because you said that. You said, I'm coping with the betrayal. Well, only a friend can betray you. Somebody who's not a friend can't betray you. Now, they could. But someone who's an enemy can't betray you for sure. So only a friend, if you look at it that way, can betray you. Her betrayal, in other words, her unloading on you. I sure would like to know what it was all about, because it'll give me a much, much, much better sense of this supposed dear friendship. I no longer trust her. Well, I could see you'd be skittish. Who knows? Maybe you don't even know what you did. Or, more likely, what you did you didn't think was anything deserving of that blast. Getting cursed out in front of people? Yikes! See, the other thing is you probably thought she didn't have this within her. Well, obviously she did. But as I said before the break, has she apologized? And there's no inclination, there's no indication here she did. So apparently she feels justified in what she did, because you just were wrong and you deserved that. All right. I find that I also no longer like her. Now, do you no longer like her because of what she did that one time? Or do you no longer like her because the relationship is a little more delicate? You're not quite sure. You don't want to set her off again. I understand this. So, back to your question. You say this, I'm trying to guard my heart against bitterness. All right, well, first of all, you don't have to be bitter. You have to look at this at what it is. What it is another person whom you thought was a friend who lost it. And the reasons they lost it are probably somewhere within themselves rather than within the event. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there's something within her interpretation of what happened that made her just so irate. Because in her mind, you did the wrong. Not her. Not she. But you can say her. So looking at that way, you recognize that what she did, as you described it, was over the top and wrong. And more than likely, it was related to something personally within herself. Okay, so that'll help you deal with this supposed sense of betrayal and lack of trust. Not wanting to be your friend is okay. You can forgive someone and be cautious around them, of course. I'm sure you're shell-shocked by what she did. But here's a question I have for you. Why are you letting this get to you so much? See, there's a direct relationship. The harder that you absorb someone's nastiness, the harder it is to forgive them. if you recognize her nastiness as springing from something within herself, and the fact that she did this, and the fact that you did not gauge that she was capable of this, you hadn't seen this before in your friendship, you won't be quite so bitter toward her. You'll recognize, you know what, I found out something about her that can be really ugly. I really am nervous about it happening again because that came out of left field last time. So therefore, I'm going to be very cautious around her. Our relationship, because we work together, will still be somewhat civil, superficially pleasant, but that's about it. Okay, you don't have to embrace her as a friend anymore. Move on. But at the same time, the way you forgive her is you say, Lord, whatever it is that's hurting her, help her. Whatever it is that is feeding into any proclivity to do something like that, help her. Now that's forgiving her because you're praying for her. But Dr. Ray, I do not feel like praying for her. You don't have to feel like praying for her. Just pray for her. Feelings are no gauge whatsoever of forgiveness. Forgive her. You more or less said, okay, what she did was wrong. I'm going to be cautious around her. Probably not going to have much of a friendship with her anymore. But I will wish her the best, and I will hope that at some point that she is not so tense about certain things, and maybe she'll even apologize. That would be kind of nice, wouldn't it? There you go. So your forgiveness is just, you're going to pray for her, but it's not tied into the fact that you're going to stay friends with her. And here's one more thing. That bitterness that you've had for 3 months, that's not doing you any good. What is that doing you? She probably doesn't even know how bitter you are toward her. It's not hurting her, it's hurting you. Just say to yourself, I don't want to be bitter about this anymore, and I'm going to work on not being bitter about this anymore. Dr. Ray, how do I do that? I've got feelings. Of course. And your feelings will respond to your thoughts. Change your thoughts. Rather than, how could she do this to me? I didn't deserve that. It was horrible. We were friends. Get rid of those thoughts. Simply say, she did it. I really don't understand why. It was kind of shocking and surprising, but it has nothing to do with my image before God. Dr. Ray.
Today's programming on 990 WDEO is brought to you in part by a gift from our day sponsor to honor the Legionnaires of Christ in Reginum Christi on this, the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows. We thank them for their dedication to the church and for helping its members grow in faith, hope, love, and charity.
You can be a day sponsor too. Just pick up the phone and call toll-free 1-877-288-1077 and say, I want to be a day sponsor.
The headlights of my father's station wagon briefly penetrated the thick black of the piney woods through which we drove on our way to Mag and Jim's cabin. When we arrived, my father handed the 2 wrapped plates of Thanksgiving dinner to Mag, who sat on the front porch next to a smudge pot. I followed my father into the cabin to a back room, where Jim lay on an old iron bed. Jim's form, after a long battle with cancer, was barely visible under the sheet. The bare room lacked electricity. Occasionally I could see the twinkle of a star through a small hole in the tin roof. My father sat at the edge of the bed, talking with Jim. I remember one thing Jim said. The Lord, He been so good to me. In all his illness and poverty, Jim saw the goodness of God. What a contrast to the woman who in a Lincoln Navigator pulled up to the abortion clinic and announced to me, this baby gotta go. GuadalupeWorkers.org.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
Last e-person on this e-person Monday. It's signed Sad Dad. He says, Dr. E, I got a book idea for you. Diplomacy that lasts a lifetime. Being on time is important to me. When others are late, I get upset. When they don't contact me that they are running late, I get more upset. I lose all diplomatic tact and have no consideration for their situation. Okay, Dad. Couple of things. Your virtue is your virtue. It's not theirs. What you're saying is I expect others to treat me as I treat them. And that's kind of a twist on the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Yes, you do unto others, which is not be late, as you would have them do unto you, which is I would rather they not be late. But because you do unto others does not follow that they will do unto you. See, there's where your reasoning is getting to you. So you expect them to act that way. Secondly, I think you're probably taking it personally. The fact that they're late, the fact they don't call, is a slap in my personal face. They don't care about my time. They don't care about me. They don't care about my schedule. They don't care about common social courtesy. Well, they may not. For you, it's one thing to be upset about that, to have it irk you. It's quite another, as you say, to lose all diplomatic tact. In other words, you let them know about it. Does it happen once with just this one person, or is this a routine personality trait? Well, I hit habit, not habit. Not trait, habit. Personality habit of someone you know. And you've probably mentioned it, if it is, more than once. Let it go, Louie. In the words of that famous, I think, frog on a beer commercial. Why? Because, one, your expectation is that they not act that way. And the difference between your expectation, which is what you want, and reality, which is what they did, the larger it gets, the more frustrated you get. They shouldn't be doing that. Well, yeah, they shouldn't. But they did. So the question becomes, how old are you and how long are you going to let this keep upsetting you? I don't like it. I understand that. I understand that. It's inconvenient. Certainly. And it could disrupt your schedule. I got it. But do you like when you lose all tact and have no consideration for the situation? In other words, what you're saying is, even if they have a decent reason for being late, or for not calling me, even if, I have no tolerance for that. I have no tolerance. There's nothing to stop you from calling me, even if you have a decent reason. And that's true. There is nothing generally to stop them. Sometimes there could be, but, you get caught up in construction. I know, but they got a smartphone. Yeah, maybe their battery's dead. Who knows? But what you're doing is you're taking it personal. That's really what you're doing. I'm being dissed. I'm not being treated as I treat them. That's true. Your virtue, in this case, your consideration for other people's time and efforts, is not contingent upon reciprocation. Ooh, boy, I got to write that down. In other words, you're going to be who you are despite who they are. You don't want to ruin a friendship because of a bad habit like that, especially if it's a decent friendship in many other respects, or if it's somebody you're related to within your close social circle. You don't want to do that. So, I guess, sad dad, those are just some of the thoughts on that. Well, I'm late too right now. I'm late. I'm going to tell you I'm late because I only got about 10 seconds left to go before the end of the program. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In on this E-Person Monday. Walk with God. God's never late. We might be, though.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
The end.